The Microsoft Surface Go 2, the M3 model, the Core M3 versus Surface Go 2 Pentium Gold. And gold sounds really intriguing, doesn't it? But there's a difference of $70 and the question really is it worth paying $70? What do you get for that amount and what don't you get for that amount? We're going to do all the benchmark tests available and we're really going to push both devices over the edge today to see how they perform. But we're also going to do some productivity level tests to see, well, what is the real life experience like when we use them on a daily basis? And also, is there a difference in battery performance because you have a different chip installed?
You can buy 3 different versions of the Surface Go 2, and just to be on the same page here with you guys, we're talking about the mid-range model, the Intel Pentium Gold 4425Y series with 8GB of RAM for currently $530. Another fact I would like to share with you guys is that this processor is not the same one you can find in the Surface Go. It offers higher operating frequency than the Intel Pentium 4415Y chip. We will get the Intel Core M3, Intel 8th generation Core M3, 8100Y chip, and it will set us back around $600. I don't really know why everybody is really hating on the Gold processor. Gold is a cool name. Just in case you wonder, the Surface Go 2 with the Pentium Gold processor, Gold, is on the left hand side. Gold, my bottom. You guys probably have high expectation of me. I am the M3 processor and I'm on the right hand side. Both devices have exactly the same settings for the entire video for every single test, and both are plugged into the power cord the entire video. Let's start with Geekbench 5, and you may or may not know the numbers, but I just wanted to highlight that the difference here is almost double from the Pentium Gold to the Surface Go 2 M3 version. The single core, multi-core almost doubles here. Whilst the Geekbench 5 results may not be that surprising to you guys, I wanted to spice it up a bit and run Cinebench R20. I also have the scores for the base model of the MacBook Air 2020 version here with us, and they're obviously not big surprises here. Also, the Surface Go 2 Gold Edition scores 307, whilst the M3 version has 490 points, but the base model, the MacBook Air base model of the 2020 version, only scores 620 points, not that far apart from the high-end model of the Surface Go 2. One of my favorite tests is the Basemark web test. It is a comprehensive web browser performance benchmark that really tests how well your laptop desktop system can use any web-based application, and I think it is so important in the world of cloud these days. And when you look at the scores, the M3 scores 445, which means it is more capable when using web-based application, although the Surface Go 2 Pentium Gold Edition only scores 307. I'd like to put it into perspective. The base configuration of the Surface Pro X only scores 270. Go figure. Our disk speed performance test becomes really interesting, although it shouldn't be that much of an interest because it has same SSDs installed. And when you look at the results, the top line pretty much is in line, right? It has the same, almost the same results, and that is the sequential read and write test. But when you move down line by line, you will see there are different results. The M3 model scores higher in every single line. And just to explain one of the tests, there is so many things your PC can do at the exact same point in time. So what it does, it uses queues and buffers to keep track of requests that still need to take place, and each of these queued requests can take like very small fraction of a second to be performed. In any event, this test is much more demanding on your SSD and CPU, and that is the reason why the M3 model scores higher. But it also shows you that basically for everything you do, the higher clocked CPU, the better CPU in your Surface Go 2 will just perform better in pretty much every single task. But we're not finished yet. It goes further. Yes, I know, the Surface Go 2 is not a gaming PC or anything gaming related. However, I just wanted to do the Unigine Heaven benchmark, and as you guys know, it's a GPU intensive benchmark that really hammers the graphics card to the limits. And that shouldn't affect really any scores here, right? But when you look at that again, the Gold Edition scores lower with 7 FPS versus 9 FPS on the M3 model, and that's pretty interesting. So again, the CPU plays a bit of a part here. And I just want to put this into perspective to spice it up. The $1,800 13-inch MacBook Pro, the newest version, here's the 2020 version i5, has 13 FPS, right? Not that much of a difference. Now it even gets better. The MacBook Air, also the 2020 version, has 9 FPS. It is in line with the Surface Go for the M3 model.
Look, this is a great example of specs on paper versus specs in real life, and the MacBook Air should have performed much better, but it didn't. You know why? Because of the cooling system. The cooling system that is installed in the MacBook Air is not really good. But then when you look at the Surface Go and Surface Surface Go 2. They don't require an active cooling system because of the lower power chips. And on paper, the specs maybe not that great, but when you look at these results, the Surface Go 2 actually performs really well.
Starting with the Surface Go 2, the Pentium Gold edition, and we wanted to put it to the test like regular working, right? We wanted to open our PowerPoint, Excel, Word. We were really using this heavily, putting together like a 30, 50 slide presentation with pictures and Word and Excel. And we also wanted to open Chrome. Like Chrome is really power hungry, as you know, the browser. We had 5 tabs open, YouTube running in the background, some really power hungry websites, and the memory usage was 60 to 70%. So that was okay, but you could see the CPU usage was taking it up, and sometimes it peaked up to like 93% really briefly, but you can tell there are already limits here. And all of this changed when we moved over to the M3 model. It was really an amazing experience. We did not have any issues here. We performed the same task on the M3 model than we did on a Pentium Gold, and we had 5 tabs open, YouTube running in the background, really heavy websites, and the application running, putting movies and pictures into the PowerPoint, Word, Excel, whatever we could find, we really threw at it. Memory usage is exactly the same here. CPU usage, however, is much lower than the Pentium Gold, and it goes up to 30%. There wasn't any spikes we saw in the Pentium Gold for the M3, and that really shows how much faster that model is. The battery level for both devices, well, I couldn't see a difference, and this is the one area where I couldn't see any difference. Basically, we put them both on full charge and then had Netflix running on battery best performance, 50% brightness, 8.5 hours, almost died at the same time. When you have heavy usage for both devices, you're talking about 5.5 hours. I couldn't tell a difference. I expected the M3 to drain faster, but in our test, it really didn't.
Are you convinced? Yeah. The M3 model is really the one you should get, right? Well, I think so too. And $70 may not sound that much for many people. It is a lot of money, but if you have that budget available, you should go for the high spec model. However, if you don't have that money available, go for the base model. That performance improvement between the base model and the mid-range model isn't really that great, and you pay $150 more for the mid-range model than you would do for the base model. But if you consider the jump from the mid-range model to the M3 model, that is massive. So it's kind of polarizing. You either go with the base model or you go with the highest spec model. Thank you for watching. Jens here from Space. Peace out.